On behalf of my co-authors, Robin Netzorg, Isabel Lee, Ethan Tam, Skyla Ma, and Bob Tianqi, this is Labor, Power, and Belonging, the work of voice in the age of AI reproduction. You may have seen in the news that Scarlett Johansson is suing OpenAI over imitating or cloning her voice. State-of-the-art speech AI technologies are capable of generating speech, so audio of a voice speaking any arbitrary given phrase, like a text-to-speech system. And they can be made to imitate target speakers, so voice cloning. And these technologies are increasingly widely available, higher quality, meaning more convincingly human and less obviously synthetic, and requiring less and less data to train or condition to imitate a particular person. Prior work on the impacts of AI and automation on labor and work has seen how the rapid deployment of AI and automation technologies into real-world industries often actually increases labor burdens and patterns of exploitation, forcing workers to quickly adapt to technology-driven disruption in their workplaces, often without their prior approval, consent, or acknowledgement for the additional labor that they are now doing. This is sometimes because the technology is designed to fail to capture the reality of their work, enacting myopic and reductionist ideas of what their labor is really like. Following this lineage of work, we seek to study the impact of rapidly emerging speech AI technology trends on voice artists and how they are shaping the present and future of their work. To do this, we conducted semi-structured interviews, each 60 minutes over Zoom, with 15 voice actors, recruited through social media, their websites, using sites like IMDb, and then through snowball recruiting, which especially picked up after we got in contact with different voice labor organizations. All of these voice actors are actively working in the voice industry with a range of experience levels. 4 were novices with less than 2 years of experience. 8 had over 10 years of experience. Within that 8, 4 had over 20 years of experience. Following this, all 6 co-authors participated in a reflexive thematic analysis process to analyze our interview data. Within our interview, we asked participants about their experiences as practicing voice actors and for their responses to emergent speech AI technologies. To ground this discussion in the reality of current state-of-the-art speech AI tech, we demonstrated various tools to them. So we demonstrated voice cloning, text-based voice generation and voice modification, so voice style prompting. And we also demonstrated a speech AI assisted audio editing tool. And finally, a segment of our interview was dedicated to a traffic light exercise, where we presented 6 scenarios, each representing a speech AI driven intervention into their work. For instance, one scenario was a company wants to pay you to acquire your voice data to use in a large training data set. Participants responded to this using a traffic light color scale. Red indicates hard limit, I am not okay with this, and green would indicate, yes, I am okay with this, enthusiastic consent. And we showed this scale to participants as they responded to each scenario. This figure shows how each participant, each represented by one of these columns here, represented to each traffic light scenario, represented by each of the rows here. So there were some participants who expressed enthusiastic consent towards scenarios that other participants were not okay with under any circumstance. From what we learned through our conversations, especially those incited by this exercise, we wouldn't necessarily characterize these more green respondents as more enthusiastic about AI intervening in their industry, but as less confident that they should expect to be able to set meaningful boundaries in their future work negotiations. We think that understanding this range of responses requires understanding the vast range of situations and roles that someone might experience when pursuing a voice work career, and how this impacts their outlook on the future and on AI-driven disruptions to their work. In other words, understanding how AI will impact the future of voice work requires understanding the present, often precarious realities of voice work. First, we want to talk about how we found that human voice artists approach vocal performance in a uniquely human way, in part because voice is a very human quality. A voice can be used to personally identify someone, to convey their beliefs. Professional vocal performers bring deeply personal and creative qualities to their work, often drawing on emotional experiences to embody a character for a performance. Voice workers are subject to all of the same threats that speech AI tech poses the average citizen, but with the additional risk to their livelihood and created due to the inherent publicity of their data. But we also want to emphasize how much work there is to voice work beyond just performance. Tasks include locating and auditioning for opportunities, managing, recording, and editing, and the equipment for recording and editing. Creative rights negotiations, so negotiating contracts and licensing agreements to their voice and to recorded performances of their voice. Managing creative property rights, and participating in labor organization and advocacy work. Artists are increasingly managing all of these tasks themselves from home, which is a very isolating situation. In the face of this isolation, community is critical. Membership in labor organizations, so unions like SAG-AFTRA, ACTRA, and advocacy groups like NAVA, combat this isolation and disempowerment. Union jobs provide workers with better working conditions, including more livable wages and rights. Participants who were involved with the union were better equipped with information about AI through meetings, seminars, or newsletters. The community keeps one another informed and engaged in this sense of community-wide commitment to solidarity, to not accepting unfair working standards. And we think that this really impacts individual expectations with regard to negotiating AI in the future of their industry. Community, union and non-union, is currently facing unprecedented challenges. Union members are locked out from work opportunities during strikes. The SAG-AFTRA interactive media and video game labor dispute just ended, and ACTRA's labor dispute with the Canadian advertising industry has been ongoing since 2022. The risks that AI technologies pose to industry workers and the need for protective provisions is increasingly playing a role in these negotiations. Not all artists are in the union. There are actually barriers for novices to join the union and get access to union jobs and benefits, and non-union jobs tend to perpetuate and normalize exploitative working conditions. We found that participants are increasingly confronting job listings from AI developers and startups that ask them to submit hours of voice data, often without fair compensation or a transparent licensing agreement that would give them rightful say in how their voice data might be used in the future. Speech AI development trends are displacing, obscuring, and exploiting voice work. We go further into each of these themes in our paper. But to end this presentation, I want to discuss how we might move towards a more equitable future for voice work. We advocate for power-conscious development of speech technologies, that we might directly collaborate with voice artists beyond treating them as data sources, and recognize how much we have to learn from them and their varied expertise as creative rights negotiators and organizers. We advocate for finding ways to support the efforts of the communities and organizations already fighting for the future of the voice community. Rather than asking them to adapt to the initiatives of technology development, how can we as technologists adapt our work and ourselves to better understand and support their initiatives? And finally, to design to support artists first. Many of our participants emphasized how a deep and enthusiastic engagement with supportive audio technology has always been a part of voice work. Creating meaningfully useful, power-conscious speech technology means understanding the reality of voice work, enough to know what specific tasks artists actually want new tools for, and may even entail limiting the capabilities of new tech so that it can't as easily be used to displace tasks that human artists want to be doing and that we want them to be doing, like performance. We want to greatly thank ACTRA and NAVA for assisting with recruitment and providing guidance and resources throughout the study. We also want to thank our participants for taking the time to participate in our study. Please feel invited to reach out to me, Shim, and to Robin. We're the two first authors on this paper with your questions and thoughts. We've also listed my website and those of our co-authors here. Thank you.